last points here. Want to go over the test here?
No.
Sorry with that. Right here. Box. All right. Okay, so here's the deal. Out of a total of 90 points possible, high score was an 88. Pretty good. So what I usually do is I just use the high score as the 100% or the max. So on Canvas, when I enter the grades, it'll say out of 88, but it's actually out of 90. But anyway, that way it curves it up a little bit for you. And then 2 is I have not entered these into Canvas yet, so I need them back. So if you don't get it back to me, you didn't do it, right? And 3 is no cell phone pictures of the tests. Because, I mean, there's only so many ways I can ask, like, what the marks say, right? So I can't change it up. So no cell phone pictures of the tests. You don't get to keep the tests. You don't always want it. But anyway, there you go. But pretty good. People did all right. Sage Harrier. Harner. Sage Harner. So out of 88 was the high score. So just if you want to do it percent, you can divide by 88. Rebecca Johnson. Rebecca? No? Oh yeah. I know we'll go over this, and I'll let you know what I was looking for. Elijah Gray. May. Caleb Flores.
At least Thursday. Yes, because he's gonna have time to set up.
Clark Moore.
Probably still get here just as early, but I'll just get some Starbucks.
Getting that right? Something more? Oh well. That's Dr. Man. Okay, Kendra Bush. Joshua Bratcher. Okay. John. Daniela. No? Yeah? Yeah, I'm sorry. The subtleties are kind of passing me up here. Joel. JD. Raybeck. There you go. Riley. Boys player. Couple Rileys in here, just like the Riley College. Okay, Acacia Clark. Kopek, sorry. Kopek. I haven't had enough
There's not even another Acacia.
Lene. Brooke Naylor. Ariana.
That's not bad at all.
No Ariana today? Okay, Canyon. Brittany. No Brittany today?
Messed up this week.
Mia Baxter. Okay. Chris Nichols. Chris? Okay. No. John Rigo. Jenna.
Am I just switching around? I don't know. You just
Elijah.
the check there.
Carly. Peyton. Riley Warden. Isabel. Isabel, no Isabel? Benny. Caitlin Easter. Okay. Go. Clark Moore. No Clark Moore? Okay, no Ariana Villegas. No Brittany. Everyone get the test back? was here? You didn't give one back, you didn't take it, right? All right, let's go ahead and go over this. What I want to do is go through each question, and I'm just gonna describe to you what I was looking for, right? Now there are times when I miss something, like, you know, if you wrote a bunch and I was kind of scanning through and I just somehow like didn't see the keyword or the phrase that I wanted and I marked it off, you know, I'll be willing to relook at it again after the test. So we'll go over this and then we'll take a break where you're going to give me your test back. And then if you had any questions, like you thought you had written what I said I was looking for, but I marked it wrong, so I'll take a look at it again. And then there's always the case of if you look at the person next to your test, and if they got it right and you got it wrong, bring me their test and I'll mark them wrong too. Cool. I actually did that one time. My first year here, there was like a real kind of a anxious ridden person who's now a physician. This person went to medical school eventually, but he was anxious ridden. So I mentioned that. I said, okay, you know, if I marked yours wrong and the person next to you wrote the same thing and they got it right, bring me their test. And he did. He brought me this woman's test next to him, and I'm like, oh, and I marked it wrong on hers. Oh, it was the best. It was the best.
I would be holding my paper.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it's not nothing.
All right, you ready? So, 1809, Jean Lamarck. Oh, Brittany here. Jean Lamarck. What did he say about the giraffe evolution? So what I'm looking for there, the best thing you could have said is Lamarck described evolution by acquired traits. So acquired traits would be a good thing to say. And then also, it says explain with underline. Basically, you needed to also kind of let me know what that means. And that is that some strain or stress that the organism experiences is passed on to the offspring as an adaptation or a change in the offspring. So like acquired traits would be great. Some sort of strain passed on to the offspring would be great. You know, I do give partial credit for giving one or the other, but to me it was more important that you kind of understood what the concept is than remember the word. So like some people like sometimes flub one word, like they might say acquittal traits or something like that. You know, and I probably, if you explained it, I would have just ignored the misspelling or something. So just check that out. 2, Darwin's theory of natural selection is the most controversial. How would Darwin explain the giraffes? The best answer is, I mean, it'd be great if you said natural selection, but then you have to explain it. And that is, among the giraffe population, there's tall ones and short ones. The tall ones get more food resources and have basically more reproductive success or more offspring, passing that trait on to the next population. That's the best answer. And that's more complete than most did. But some description of natural selection and favorable traits being passed to the next generation by survival and reproduction. However you describe it there, right? Okay, 3. What important mechanism did Darwin lack in his theory of evolution that were described later? There was really a specific thing I was looking for here, and you know, I was surprised that not very many people got this right. Some did though. And the main mechanism was, Darwin lacked a mechanism for inheritance. He didn't know how traits were passed from parent to offspring. Specifically, how traits can be hidden as recessive traits and then reappear suddenly, you know, in succeeding generations. The other possible answer that was good was Darwin also didn't know how new adaptations arose, which was by mutation. Okay, so really inheritance and genetic mechanisms, inheritance and mutation, which is the genetic transfer of traits, and the appearance of new traits is the main thing I'm looking for there. If you wrote other microevolutionary things like genetic drift or horizontal gene transfer, something like that, I probably gave you half credit. If you gave me a reasonable microevolutionary thing that Darwin didn't do. Darwin actually wrote a book on sexual selection, so many people wrote sexual selection, but Darwin didn't know about that. He just didn't know that was the giraffes situation. Okay, so 4, what is the most current explanation for why giraffes have a long neck? That's sexual selection. All right, and that the males fight for access to mating, and then thus the offspring tend to have longer necks for reproduction. So that's by sex selection. Okay, 5, compare and contrast the 2 types of evolutionary change. This one, I intended to be a much more involved answer, but I kind of was reading through and realized that people kind of went for maybe a middle involved answer. So I downgraded what I expected on this one. So even though it says worth 6 points, it's really kind of worth more like 4 points. But I went ahead and kept the 6 for the total, right? So kind of like gave you 2 bonus points for just being you, right? Anyway, so microevolution is specifically, we needed to say, it's change in heritable traits or alleles in a population. So it's change of traits in a population or allele frequencies in a population. It's the better answer, but I allowed traits. Whereas macroevolution is change in speciation. Microevolution happens, in a short time span, like 1 to 1,000 generations. Macroevolution usually takes 10,000 or more generations to go. The alternative to saying generations is if you indicated time is what connects them. Time in terms of generations is the main thing. So then the last thing I was looking for on this one is, in order to go from microevolution to macroevolution, you need to have reproductive isolation. So you have to have populations no longer reproductively exchanging gene flow. So reproductive isolation is the best answer there. So that's kind of like the main points I'm looking for, all right? Sound good? Okay. All right, page 2. At the very top, there's a little blank, and it says, what does natural selection change in a population? The best answer is alleles or heritable traits, right? Okay. Female robins lay 4 eggs in a nest. More than 4 involves mortality. Less than 4 involves mortality, so 4 is the optimum. This is a stabilizing selection, right? Where the middle, 4, no more, no less, just right is kind of the selective trait. Cockroaches are becoming more resistant to pesticides. This is directional selection, so some indication that it's going to a resistant population. Short-beaked finches eat off the ground. Long-beaked finches eat insects. Medium finches don't have much food. So this is a disruptive or diversifying selection. You're going for the 2 extremes. So those are worth 2 points each. And it was great to have the word. Some people just gave me a little graph, but didn't even label the graph. Just kind of showed like lines and hoops. Okay. So I tried to suss up that you understood it. I really kind of needed the term, or at least a description. If you couldn't remember the term, it's always good to like write a little sentence saying, hey, I don't remember the term, but this is what it means. And usually that works for you, okay? 2 paleontologists, Eldridge and Gould, proposed an alternative theory. They proposed punctuated equilibrium. And that is because the fossil record shows long periods of no change and then rapid periods, or brief periods of rapid change. Whereas Darwin thought that species change gradually over time. Eldridge and Gould proposed that the fossil record doesn't support that. It's more changing rates. Got it? So punctuated equilibrium would be a great answer, but I also needed to see kind of a little bit of a explanation too. Especially when you got like 4 inches of space, big white open spot. Usually, even if you write punctuated equilibrium in like huge font, you're gonna have to have more answer there. Okay, all right, on to page 3. The domestic dogs are descendants of wolves. How does this dog couple have some issues for reproductive isolation? This is obviously a mechanical isolation, right? Maybe we can get the little Chihuahua stepladder or something. That basically they would not be able to reproduce directly, but why we consider them the same species, the best answer is that we're looking at reproduction in a population. It's not individual reproduction. It's in the population. The Chihuahua could breed with dogs that are sufficiently small to interbreed with, and the Great Dane could breed with dogs that are sufficiently smaller or appropriate size. But basically, gene flow could exist in a population between descendants of these 2 dogs. And so, and then the other answer that no one wrote is they're domestic animals and they're not wild natural populations, right? So That would have been a good answer, but no one knows that. But the better answer was, it's population gene flow that we're considering, not just an individual that can't reproduce. Okay, the giant red urchins. Okay, the key words here are they co-occupy, or they cohabit the rocky intertidal zones, but they do not interbreed. Okay, so they don't interbreed. That means they don't have any interbreeding at all. And how they mate is they cast their eggs and sperms out into the water, and the sperm cells find the egg cells in the water. So they cast their eggs and sperm cells to fertilize. I thought that'd be a good enough hint that this was a gamete fusion problem, right? That the sperm cells cannot connect to the egg cells, and that's what their barrier is. I had all kinds of answers that were speculative, but I mean, I thought just writing eggs and sperms fertilization would have given you a huge hint there. And then, so the follow-up questions on these are kind of like, I think what I'm trying to do there, so let's put it this way. Each one of these points is worth 2 points, right? 9A and 9B are worth 2 points each. 9A is the main one I'm looking for the mechanism. 9B, I'm kind of asking some follow-up questions. For one is, sometimes if you don't get 9A right, you'll accidentally put the right answer in 9B, and I'll be like, okay, cool, you got the answer, I'll go ahead and accept that. But it's also kind of asking you some follow-up questions. So what mechanism may have led to the divergence of these species originally? There's a wide range of answers, but one could have been they were geographically separated by vicarians at some point in time. Microevolution led to them no longer recognizing each other. You know, that's kind of the idea. I'm looking for some mechanism of how they could have become separate species. So really a good answer here would have been like allopathic speciation or vicarians or something like that, right? You know, people wrote like polyploidy, and I'm like, I don't know, but you know, it depends. Like in that case, on that answer, I think for 9B, if you wrote that a polyploidy event happened, I don't think I might be wrong. But polyploidy was not the answer for why they're separate species that don't reproduce. Okay, 10A, the spotted owl and the Mexican spotted owl are basically subspecies in populations. What's the mechanism? This is a great geographic isolation. They're separated geographically. And then the follow-up answer is, given sufficient time, they will never mate even if they occupy the same habitat. What mechanism may lead to separate species? This could be anything, but behavioral, could be temporal isolation, it could be gamete fusion, mechanical isolation, it could be postzygotic infertility or whatever. And then, so this is a controversial one, is some people wrote ecological isolation. You know, I mean, I guess so, but I mean, there was really no indication on this. I mean, the spotted owls are occupying basically forest habitat in northwest and in Mexico in the south central area. So, you know, I'm not sure if I gave you if you said ecological, but that certainly would have been one of the follow-up answers too. So check your answer there. But geographical is the best one. Some people wrote geological, and I assumed that you messed up spelling geographical, right? So there is no geological isolation. Okay, the stink bugs. They use a mating call, which they're showing on the map, the little rhythmic pattern of their male and female mating call, a little chirping action. So, what is the reproductive isolation mechanism that's going on here? And it's behavioral. Anything that talks about a mating call will be behavioral. And then the follow-up question is, which population might be worth investigating as a cryptic species? A couple of people asked me what cryptic meant. I thought that was kind of a common term. Doesn't cryptic mean hidden? Like a crypt is like where you stick a body, where you hide your dead bodies, right? So cryptic means a hidden species, or like, you know, not so obvious, hidden away. But, all right, the anemone flower has two species that occupy the same habitat. They look similar, but they do not interbreed. The flower, below the flowers, is a karyotype of the chromosomes found in their cells. I wonder what the answer is here. And what reproductive isolating mechanism limits the exchange of their genetic material? So this is a classic case of polyploidy. If you look at one, it has double the chromosome number of the other one, right? So it's classic polyploidy. And then, then it says, what specific mechanism may have led to the divergence of anemone flower species? I'm looking here for specifically, and the only thing you could say that would be supported would be autopolyploidy. Because if it was allopolyploidy, we would have to have had 3 species here, right? 2 parents that hybridized and made a hybrid offspring. But this is just showing one that had half the chromosome, one that has double the chromosome. So the better answer is autopolyploidy. So if you wrote, polyploidy is the right answer for 12A, but for 12B, autopolyploidy would have been the best answer. Let me get to your test here. So you jumped in here. Here. Chris? No, yeah. Clark. Okay, so any questions on that one? All right, so, okay. And then the leopard frog, they mate using a frog song, but if you look at the map, it shows that they're doing this song at different times of the year. January through March, April through June, August through November. So this is temporal isolation, right? They're separated temporally. And then it says, if they hybridize, what might prevent the hybrids from successfully reproducing? This could have been a number of answers. Hybrid inviability, it could be that hybrids don't have the appropriate song at the time of year. There could be a variety of answers there, but I'm just kind of trying to get you to maybe reflect on the temporal isolation there. Gotcha? Sound good? Okay. All right, on to page 5, where Darwin's traveled. On A, departed England. How did Darwin end up on the voyage? He was basically brought on as the captain's dinner companion, or intellectual companion. He was not originally the naturalist of the ship. That was the ship's surgeon. But he was brought on as a suitable buddy for the captain. The Cape Verde Islands, that was the island of St. Iago, or island of Santiago. And what Darwin saw there was, he saw basically lava, volcanic eruption, and then lava and coral and lava layers on the beach areas, or the cliff areas. So he saw what amounted to like a lava coral sandwich, which indicated that that change in this environment has happened over a long period of time, which reinforced Lyell's Principles of Geology book. So I needed to see something about Principles of Geology or Lyell's book, or something like that. But that's in addition to just what he saw, it confirmed this idea of change over long periods of time. C, what did Darwin see in Brazil? He saw that fertile climates or lots of abundant resources resulted in higher population and diversity of species. And this confirmed Malthus's on populations, that basically populations grow exponentially and resources grow geometrically, right? Chile, what Darwin saw there was fossils that resembled current living species. So he looked at on fossil that resembled current living armadillos. He saw some clam fossils that resembled current living clams. And so he realized that there was a connection between basically species change over time. That was the fossil record. The Galapagos Islands is where he saw finches and tortoises, but basically the finches specialized into their feeding resources. They adapted or specialized their traits to favor their food supply or their habitat. You also saw the tortoises were kind of unique to each island, probably specialized to the island. And so that was the evidence there was species adapt to their favorable traits for the resources. back in England, this was kind of, I mean, I thought it was pretty clear, but look, some of the answers are kind of disappointing. The best way to say this one was back in England, you know, he basically researched, or it led up to him publishing the origin of species, or his theory of natural selection, 25 years after he got back, basically. So, you know, with such big space and with such all this information, it was kind of disappointing to see some people write, he did some research. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so but anyway, specifically, he wrote the book Origin of Species when he got back about 25 years later. And that was kind of, and developed natural selection theory. Okay, survival of the fittest was a phrase coined by Herbert Spencer. Why is this phrase considered a poor explanation of Darwin's theory? Best answer is because fitness in biology means reproductive success. Essentially, it means survival of those that reproduce, or survival of those that strive to reproduce. So it's a circular reasoning or a tautology. So just writing the word tautology is not enough. It says, why is this phrase considered a poor explanation? You need to kind of tell me, right? So just if you just wrote tautology, it wasn't really enough, right? Well, I gave partial credit, but you kind of need to tell me what tautology is. My favorite was the ones that actually define tautology with tautology itself. And so my favorite one said, it's a tautology, which is a circular reasoning. I'm like, okay, well, just basically use tautology to define tautology. Okay, good job. You can never be wrong with tautology. Okay, so, but again, good explanations are important. And then what phrase better describes Darwin's theory, and that's descent with modification, right? All right, on to page 6. Tiger populations have been decimated by overhunting. Decimated. That decimated means you move a dozen places over, right? You go from like 100,000 down to less than 1,000, right? Boy, what evolutionary process is likely happening there? Genetic drift caused by a bottleneck for population, right? Population bottleneck. So I accept the population bottleneck by itself, but genetic drift is kind of the mechanism of change. And then the 16B had a wide variety of answers, but the Siberian tigers are 700 pounds, the Sumatran tigers are 250. What might explain the difference? Well, I mean, they're adapted to their habitat, and there's a wide variety of answers. But basically, once they've been isolated, the Siberian and Sumatran tigers do not interbreed, so they basically have their own natural selection and adaptations for their environment. So a wide variety of answers could be accepted there. Basically, once they're isolated, microevolutionary changes are unique to those environments. Some people wrote the Siberian tigers are bigger to stay warm, and Sumatran ones are smaller to cool off. And that's probably a good answer, but didn't need to have that. Okay, Trichomonas vaginalis is an STD that has a big old chunk of genome from a bacteria. And this is the exact example I gave you in class and on Canvas in the article. And so, so it's kind of like regurgitation. So the best answer here is horizontal gene transfer, right? Horizontal gene transfer is where basically one species or a completely different type of organism incorporates the genome pieces from another organism. So it's a unique thing, and this is an example of that. So because it was the exact example I gave in class, I was kind of being real picky about that. So if you wrote, some people wrote like Trichomonas eats the bacteria and then uses genes, I mean that's okay for partial credit. But I needed to, the horizontal gene transfer is the mechanism you should understand what this is. It's not just like, you know, it's a specific thing, right? There you go. Any questions, Helen? All right, on to page 7. This one is one of the ring species examples, right? The green warblers. And so the question here, this is interesting. This is a little bit, this is a thought one. Are the P.T. viridanus and P.T. pluvitarsus distinct species explained? And the best answer is is, well, I mean, really, the best answer is no, they're not distinct species because there's gene flow through the south population. So technically speaking, they're not separate species because they can do gene flow through the south, even though they don't directly reproduce. There's reproduction that goes on in the southern region, and that's explained in the article. Or an alternative good answer would have been yes and no. Yes, they're distinct species at the northern region because of behavior and isolation, but no, because there still is gene flow from the south. And then some people even added, which is really good, that said if the southern population went extinct, we would have to call them separate species, right? So again, this is a controversial. There's really not a true yes and no answer on this one. It was kind of like you need to kind of explain. It depends. So the two potential mechanisms that reinforce the species status. Some people misunderstood this question, I think. Basically, the article is saying, are they separate species or are they not separate species? So if 18A, if the best answer is no, they're the same species because they reproduce in the south, 18B is saying, well, if they were separate species, what reinforces that? And I say from the article. And what I was hoping is that you would say, through this chain of populations, traits such as habitat, color pattern, morphology, and behaviors, song and song recognition, these are mechanisms by which they use to isolate themselves, right? They have ecological isolation, the habitat. They have behavioral, color patterns and behaviors, morphology, mechanical. So there's like a whole bunch of different isolated mechanisms that are being reinforced, right? So, but what I wanted you to do was to see them from the article and not like make them up on top of your head. So, anyway. And then finally, the pattern is called a ring species, which I already mentioned that one before. Okay, so also make sure my math's correct. Add up all the minuses. I did have some math issues at the beginning, but I think I corrected all of those. I went through and checked again. So let's do this. I need the test back because I have not entered them into Canvas. And so let's take like a 10-minute break early. You can just give me your test back. You can hand it to me if you're okay with it or whatever. If you have a question, you can line up over here in order and show me your question, and I'll take a look at your